Hi, this is Gary D. Toniquette from morethanasnapshot.com. Welcome to our first critique of 2015. We have some great images to look at, and let's just dive right in. All right, we'll start with this Christmas image, and I'll get rid of some of this stuff so we can see it bigger. And I like this image, nice Christmas looking scene. You can see that it's in focus, and it does have a couple of little technical things we can work on. Number one, there is of course a little bit overexposure where the light is. That's not a big deal because when you photograph any light bulb, it's like photographing the sun. It's going to be overexposed almost no matter what you do. So the rest of the exposure looks fine. I wouldn't even bother to try to fix that highlight. And we do have a nice little glint in the light there. I think the one thing that is probably a little bit off in this image is the white balance. So you can see it has a very warm, sort of yellowish tone to it. We could try around with some auto settings or presets, and you can see here what a difference it makes. We might even try tweaking it manually, maybe if you want a little bit of warmth. But I think originally it was just a bit too warm. I know tungsten light bulbs are going to give you that warm glow, but I think we needed to take some of it out of this image, and I think the colors look a lot more natural now. So composition-wise, nice image. Exposure-wise, I think it was done well. Just needed a little tweak in the white balance. All right, here we have also a very nice image of this dog. I like the nice relaxed emotion we're getting out of the dog. And the lighting is nice. It's backlit. You can see here on the fur, the light must be coming from a window or something back here. We do have catch lights in the eyes, and it does seem to be in focus. At least where the eyes are, which is the important part. You can see that because of limited depth of field, the nose is out of focus and the back is out of focus. But I think that's all right. You captured the most important part right here, which is the eyes. Maybe we would have liked to have a little more depth of field to at least get the nose in focus. But certainly the back of the dog is perfectly fine being out of focus. I don't know where exactly you pointed the camera, but the little focus point. But you can see there's a lot of focus throughout the forehead of the dog, but we're lacking it right on the nose. So I would say that's the only little minor flaw with that image. Exposure-wise, it looks good. White balance, it looks good. And so I think it's a great image. Here we have a nice black and white image, some water spray probably at some sort of a park. And what's nice is we get to see the people reacting. You caught just the right moment when the action was happening, so that was great. We can even see some expression here of the water hitting the person, some expression here. And so it's a cool image. The exposure looks great. The sharpness looks fine. We could try maybe a little more contrast, but that's a personal choice. Sometimes I like black and whites with a little more contrast. Just taking a look what it looks like with more and less. I think, yeah, maybe just a little bit. But again, that's up to you. Seasoned to taste, but good job. Okay, here we had a couple of portraits, and I guess the person was working on lighting and things like that. And they're very nice. They said disregard the background, but of course the background is an important part of the picture. I think having the background split between blue and this sort of brown color is the problem. So you would want to pick one or the other. Make sure you're using maybe just the blue or just the brown. It would help simplify the image. The lighting looks pretty good. We can see a nice catch light in the eye here. I guess I can't zoom in any more than that. It's a very soft lighting because we don't see very defined shadows. We can see a shadow under the chin here and a little bit of a shadow under the nose. The light is very much coming from the side. And so that looks okay. It makes her skin look nice and soft, and that works well. The one thing that I was getting out of these images that bugged me a little bit was a heavy sort of blue color cast, and that's probably because of these curtains in the room. You can see if you look really closely on the highlights in her hair, there's blue in her hair. And I don't know if there's another curtain, another blue curtain on this side that may be causing that, or maybe coming from her jacket or whatever it might be. But really that's the only thing that sort of bothers me about this image. And in Lightroom there are some controls where we might be able to tone that down. Let me find where did it go? Right here. Hue, saturation, and luminance. We could take down the blues in the saturation just a little bit, and probably more importantly in the luminance. And I'm not quite so concerned with what's going on with the curtain as I was with what's going on in the highlights of her hair. And I think that is starting to get rid of it. All right. See if we can see a difference in the before and after. Yeah, it's a little less noticeable. And I like the expression, so a good job. This one you can see again that very heavy blue throughout the image, so I would do the same thing. Take down the aqua and the blue just a little bit, and you'll have a much nicer looking image. This one's got a much more distracting background. We still have part blue, part brown, but this one also has whatever this line is in the background. Still got a decent expression. The lighting you can see is a little different in this image. It's coming more from the top. We can see that the shadow is more under her nose instead of in the last one more to the side. And it's not bad. It works either way in this case. I think that if the light would have been more at a 45-degree angle and pointed roughly 45 degrees down, we'd get what we call a loop light, which is you'll have a little bit of shadow on the side of the nose, making a little loop. You might want to try that. Oh, I'm zoomed in. Here we have a smoking apple image. And this is well done, a little studio setup kind of a thing, a still life with a little bit of action of the smoke involved. And it was well done. It looks nice. We have good exposure and sharpness. And we have some interesting smoke in the background. And we have some cool light on the table. So as far as the way it was done, no problems. It's nice. Why the apple would be smoking, I don't know. But other than that, good job. Other than that, too, as I just think about it, I think maybe the one thing that's bothering me about it is that the highlight on the apple is dead center in the middle facing us. And I think that's a little bit of a problem. It looks like this was probably lit directly from the top down. You can see all the highlight is up on top, and we have the shadows more down here. So I think I would have lit it a little bit differently, more from the side, having a highlight side of the apple and a shadow side of the apple. Even if you put some sort of reflector on the shadow side so the shadow's not so deep. But having the main highlight directly in the middle of the apple, I think that's the main technical mistake that you made. Here we have some pictures where the person was talking about what to do about glare in eyeglasses. And the main easiest thing to do about this is what you mentioned, and that is finding a different angle so that you don't have the glare in the glasses. What happens with light is the light comes in from a certain direction, it hits the glass, and it bounces off. Just like with a mirror, the light comes in at an angle of incidence and then comes out with an angle of reflection. And if your camera lens is pointed at the glass, right at the point where the light is being reflected, that's where you're going to see the glare. So if you change your position a little bit left, right, up, down, you will find a spot where the reflection is going past your lens and you will not have any glare in the glasses. And I think that's the best way to handle it. Are there other ways to handle it? Possibly. The other way that you could have done it is if you have a circular polarizing filter, you can put that on the front of your lens and turn it to just the right position. And what the circular polarizing filter does is it eliminates glare. So it would help take off the glare from the glasses. But to me, that's just an extra step that could be avoided just by finding a different angle. In some extreme cases, I've even heard of people taking out the lenses from the glasses, but I see really no need to do that. If you find the right position or use a circular polarizing filter, you shouldn't have any problem with glare in glasses. Other than that, as far as this picture goes, the exposure looks good. And if we zoom in, well, can't zoom in, but as far as I can tell at this distance, that does look like it's in focus. We have a good pose, an interesting leading line taking us to the subject. She is sort of in the third, but I think maybe not quite enough. We have this side here that's sort of overexposed and really not adding to the picture. So I think with some cropping, we could help that, get rid of a lot of that stuff. Whether we choose to include the hands, probably a good idea to include the hands. And we're still going to get some of this side by doing that, but we have much less of that distraction on the left side. And then I would probably choose to darken it either by using the vignetting tool or by using a brush and going in there and darkening it down. Right now I will try the vignette and see if we can darken down all of the edges. It even, did a good job on this side, and it's not overexposed now on this side either. And we want to call attention to the most important part, which is her face. So I'm going to grab the brush tool and I'm going to zero it out. And probably the first thing I'll do is I want to go back over those highlights and make them a little darker even. So this whole area I'm going to make darker. And just doing it quick here. This little highlight here, I'm going to make that darker. And then I'll probably come down here and even make all of this a bit darker. All right. And then I'm going to get a new brush and reset it by double-clicking on the word effect. And then this time I'm going to make it a bit brighter because I want to call attention to her face. And so I'm going to paint right over her face with this brush. And maybe a bit over the hair, just a little bit to bring out some highlights. All right, again, that was just a quick job there. I'll go way overboard so you can see what we did, and then I'll find a spot where it seems to look good. Probably that's almost a half a stop, not quite a half a stop, brighter. And I'll put that brush away, and then we'll see if we can see a before and after of this. Now you can see that her face becomes much more a center of interest in that photo. All right. I think the other ones were similar, and in this image the background is already sort of muted. It's not quite as bright, so we don't really have those kinds of problems. But I still would like to punch up the contrast a little bit. That helps darken the darker areas and brighten the brighter areas. And then I still probably would do a little bit of brightening on her face. Again, I'd grab that brush and probably do some in the hair. And it's going to have to be very subtle. We probably only need maybe about 1/3 of a stop brighter on this one. Again, it really now calls attention to her face. And you can see the difference, the before and the after. And it doesn't seem like there was any problem with the glasses in this shot. And I like your composition, looks pretty good. You came dangerously close with the top of her head on almost cutting it off, but you didn't, so okay. Now in some pictures it's okay to chop off the top of somebody's head if you're doing it on purpose, but in this particular image it was looking like you were trying to include it all, but you came dangerously close to cutting it off. And I think it's okay in this image that the hands are completely cut off. That's fine, as long as we're not seeing like half a hand or something like that. So good image. Here we have a black and white version. And again, I like the composition. Again, with most black and whites, I tend to think that they usually are helped by having a bit of contrast. I think that works well. And again, I'd probably do the same thing, just brightening up the face a bit. Just not that much. So again, maybe almost 1/3 of a stop. Just a subtle change, but can make a big difference. Makes this very much more the center of attention. All right, let's see. Hit the wrong button. All right, let's go on to the next one. Here we have Lighthouse. I believe it was Portland Head Lighthouse, something like that in New Hampshire. I believe I photographed this lighthouse once before also. And it's very nice. It's a great landscape location to go back many times and try to shoot it at different seasons and different lighting conditions. And this is a very nice image. The one thing I would say is that it, while it's very nice, it may lack a little bit of drama. We don't have any, sunsets or anything like that going on. No, major storm clouds or anything too interesting going on. So, other than that, it looks good. The other thing is that there's a lot of blue in this image as far as the color cast is concerned. You can see even in the histogram, a really large peak of blue here in the highlights of this image. Due to the time of year, a lot of blue in a cloudy, overcast kind of a day. So we could work on that with white balance and see if we can eliminate some of that. Now this auto went too much in the other direction. Now it's almost too warm. It looks sort of unnatural. So we'll go back to the way it was shot and we'll manually just take away a little bit of that blue. And see if we need any tint adjustment. Just a slight amount. All right. So just to warm it up a little bit, make it look a little more natural, a little less blue. The other thing is this image could be a good candidate for a black and white. And so I'll just pick a preset here. Black and white high contrast, low contrast. Let's try the high contrast and see how it looks. Yeah, it makes a very good black and white. You could work on the sky and try to pull out some more detail and try to get some more texture in the sky. But let me see if we pump up the clarity and maybe pull down the highlights in the sky. Yeah, not a whole lot of detail there. So that would be the one problem with this black and white. Not a whole lot of detail in the sky to work with. But it can work as a black and white. Here we have a nice street scene at night, and we have some Christmas lights, and the prominent figure is this man in the shadow and the highlights from all the lights. And it's very nice, and the exposure and the sharpness are all good. I think that the major problem with the image is this sign right here and this person right here. Because they're white and they're bright, and this one even has an arrow, this totally grabs our attention and throws it out of the image right over here. So this sign and this white coat are really taking us out of the image. So we can just fix that by cropping that right out. The guy in black here is not as big a deal because he's not very bright. So it doesn't really matter if we leave him or take him out. So as long as we get rid of the sign and the white coat, now the image is much more simplified. And when you look at it, you say, oh, your main subject is this guy standing in front of all these Christmas lights and this nice street scene, and all, you know, we don't get distracted by that arrow taking us out of the picture. Now this picture I tend to like more than the last one. Same characteristics as far as the sharpness and the lighting. All of that looks good. He does a really good job white balancing for his night scenes. So there's no, weird color casts we need to get rid of. And we got this really cool steam coming out of this sewer cap, and that's kind of, an important part of the image. It's the main focus area. And it's cool that the streets and everything are a little bit wet. It works well for night photography. Again, one other thing you might want to try when you do your night photography is not wait so late, because you have totally black skies. If you could do it at a time, what they call the blue hour, when it's dark out, but yet there's still a blue tone in the sky, you'll find you'll have much more punch to your nighttime photos. So you might want to give that a try. Here we had someone who was working on using Photoshop to fix their images, and I think this was, if I'm following it right, this was probably the original image, and then they did some editing to it. And I think overall, you improved the image. I think the only thing that sort of bugs me about it is there's sort of a heavy green to that tree, and it sort of gives almost a little bit of a green color cast in the picture. So I would see if I could come down, and I'm on saturation, so I might take down the saturation in the greens a little bit, and maybe the luminance too. And it also seems a little heavy in the red. Maybe you just pumped up your overall saturation a little bit too high. You have to be very, very gentle with your saturation. So I'm just going to take the overall saturation down just a little bit. And that's the before and after. A small difference, but I think an important one. The other thing is with however this image was lit, because her face is in front of his face and the lighting seems like it's coming from this side, from the right side of the picture, or from their perspective, the left side of the picture, her head is casting a shadow on his head. So if you're going to light more than one person, you have to make sure that your light is a little bit more forward than you would if you were lighting one person. That way you're lighting both people a little more equally, and you don't have one person casting a shadow onto the second person. And here she did an effect with some white, and it looks fine. Looks good. Here we had a self-portrait, and it's funny because I like how you put them all together to show the progression of how hard it is to work with kids. And in each shot, the kids are just not giving you what you want. And that's the whole challenge in that whole thing. With kids, it's much easier to shoot one kid at a time to try to get them to look at you. When you got 3 kids, getting them all to look at you all at the same time is very difficult. So at least in a couple of shots, you got one of them to look at you. And you had a nice little scene there with the pumpkins and the bale of hay, and it shows you in your environment dealing with your kids, and that's great. So welcome to the class. Here we have what looks like maybe in some sort of a mall or something, a nice black and white image. I like the toning that you did in the image. It looks good. And it's a nice, I think it does tell a story. It's sort of a calm, empty sort of feeling, an empty seat. Couple of things about it that maybe you could comment on is that this railing here is a nice leading line, but it doesn't really lead us to anything. There's nothing out here for it to bring us to. So our main subject is here. So I think you needed to find a different angle on this bench. Maybe more to the right side, a little more of an angle on the bench, and so that we'll see that railing going across this way. And then we wouldn't see so much empty space over here on the right. There's nothing going on here. We have a little bit of overexposure here in the sky, so that could be just cropped out. But I think this left side of the picture works well, but the right side of the picture is just, I think, too empty. Here we had someone that was working on the sports lesson, and I like it. What I really like about it is that you're like down on field level. You feel like you're equal at an equal height to the player, and so it's not like you're shooting it from way up in the stands and coming down. So I really like that. And you're catching a point of action right in the middle of a pitch, and you can see all the other players and umpires are all paying attention because he's about to throw the ball. So there's a little bit of anticipation going on, and the exposure and the sharpness and all those kinds of things look good. So I like it. I wonder if you kept shooting, because even while this is action, it's sort of the beginning of the action. So you want to try to capture the height of the action. So it would have been cool to see if you had gone on with the motor drive and finished the sequence. Did you get a shot of, the ball just about to be released from his hand, or the ball coming out of his hand, or something with a little bit more action to it? But other than that, I think you did a good job. Oops. I went ahead a couple. All right, here is a very nice image of what I think is a seagull of some kind. And I really like this one. It might be my favorite one of the bunch this week. It's a very calm scene showing, this bird probably cold and tired and tucking itself into its wing. But you captured it nice and close. It's very sharp. And the lighting on it is really nice. We have side light. We got a catch light in the eye. So everything about it is great as far as the way you took the picture. It's just too bad it's just a seagull, not the most exciting bird to photograph. But hey, it's a nice seagull picture. That's fine. So good job. Here we have a nice little bunny rabbit eating some grass. So you got a little bit of a nature story in there. I think the problem composition-wise is that the rabbit is facing to the left and he's very close to the left side. So, and then we have this empty space on the right side. So when you were framing up that shot, whatever you photograph an animal, you always want to leave room in front of them, not room behind them. And that's kind of what you did. You left the room behind them. So with some cropping, we can sort of fake it that it was done right. We'll crop up, and so now it's a little bit tighter in the back end, and there's now seems like a little bit of room on the left side. If you really wanted to, you could go into Photoshop, and there are some tools where you could add to your canvas and try to clone in some grass and stuff. You could do something like that, but this is not too bad just with a little bit of cropping. And you do seem to be at a fairly low angle, although I think you could have maybe been a little bit lower to be more at eye level. But it's tough with an animal like this, because if you try to do too much, sometimes you just end up scaring it away. And it looks like it's sharp and the exposure is good. The only problem in the exposure is the background up here is overexposed. And you could try the brush tool and try working on bringing that down. I'll make my brush big and soft. And I'm overdoing it right now, but we'll tone that down a bit after. All right, so we toned that down a bit, just we don't need to be quite so much. But even though we sort of fixed that, this little, I don't know, whatever white rock or whatever it is over here is so overexposed we can't bring it back. So good shot of the animal, but a little bit of exposure problem back here. We probably should have painted in some over here too. But with wildlife photography, sometimes you have to deal with what conditions you're given, and in this case it was some tough lighting conditions. You did get a nice catch light in the rabbit's eye, that's good, and the light on the rabbit is good because the rabbit was in the shade. It's just too bad it was so bright. It wasn't very much shade to deal with. Okay. And I believe that's the last image. So I hope you enjoyed the critiques, and if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the bottom, and we'll see you next week.
If you like this video, please be sure to hit subscribe down at the bottom so you can see our future videos. Also, you might want to check out the show notes to see my other websites like morethanasnapshot.com, where you can take my online photography class. Also, like us on Facebook so you'll know what's new with morethanasnapshot.com.